Alrighty, this is Josh Rubin from East West Healing Improvements. Today, what we're going to talk about is just a mishmash of Josh. There's just some basic things in here. You're going to see some info from recordings of Check Connect. We're going to talk about genetically modified crops. We're going to be talking about self-diagnosis and H. pylori, a little bit about diverticulitis, a bunch of other things too. So it's just a mishmash. Don't forget to check out our website at eastwesthealing.com. Link to our blog with over 600 posts. Our blog talk every Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Call for your free consultation now. You can get a consultation with myself or Jeanne. So either one, give us a call, 760-597-9727. So today what I want to talk about first is self-diagnosing. Clients are getting more and more complex. They're coming in with tons of different diseases, tons of different problems, and the biggest problem is people are getting their degrees from Google University. They're coming in and going, I'm nauseous. Food's sitting in my stomach. And I have acid reflux. I have H. pylori. I've definitely H. pylori. So I've been taking the Master Gum. I've been doing the Manuka honey. I've been doing the Matula tea. And they're like these big biochemists. But I still have the symptoms. But I definitely have H. pylori. Well, don't you think if you had H. pylori and you did a lot of the right things that you wouldn't have H. pylori anymore? And you wouldn't have the symptoms? And the funny thing is every time we test them, they don't have H. pylori. So they've wasted their time, energy, and money. So stop self-diagnosing based off your symptoms. That is you people. It's turning into an epidemic. They're going to have to come up with a new disease for it. It's actually quite incredible. You have acid reflux. It could just be you're maybe too acidic. It could just be you have actually acid reflux. It could be you're hypochlorhydric. It doesn't mean you have H. pylori. You could maybe use things like neem tea, cabbage juice in the morning. You might use things like aloe vera. You might things like bitter herbs, gentian, scutellaria. Vinegar at meals to help bring you to normal, and then you don't need it anymore. Don't diagnose yourself. It's the worst thing that you could do. We're seeing this all the time. You're wasting money on supplements, where they're very expensive, a lot of time and energy, and self-diagnosing yourself is probably the worst thing you could do subconsciously. So if you have a symptom, try to take a step back and research maybe what you could change in your life nutritionally that might be causing that. And then once you've basically exhausted all options, then do some testing before you start popping some supplements in your mouth, because most people don't understand the implications of putting things down their throat. Everything is not linear, and it affects the whole body. Second thing I want to talk about is whole foods and canola oil. Canola oil, if you study genetically modified crops, there's 4 of them that are the most highly genetically modified crops. And you can study what genetically modified is. You're basically eating food that's not food. And you're eating foods that are spliced, and our body doesn't recognize these. So there's a lot of research to show that they can actually cause tons of genetic disorders and a lot of the new emerging diseases that we're seeing nowadays, such as autoimmune diseases and all these new genetic diseases that, 1% of the population has. So, and they're feeding it to animals as well. The most commonly genetically modified crops are canola oil, cotton, corn, and I'm drawing a blank on the last one. Canola oil, corn, cotton, can't think of the last one. Anyway, there's 4 of them. Check it out. Understand what you're putting in your mouth. Whole Foods, which is supposed to be this organic, great place to get food, which I think is absolutely horrible. I'm not a really big fan of Whole Foods. If that's the only place you can get food, go for it. You can order online. Check out our website on our resources page. There's 5 farms you can order from all over the U.S. and get food overnight. Most of their cooked foods, do the research, all their cooked foods have canola oil in it. Canola oil is 100% genetically modified. 100%. And you're trying to eat healthy, and they're putting genetically modified foods in your body, which can create huge amounts of internal stress, break down the gut, and create autoimmune diseases. So research this, understand what you're putting in your mouth, and just because you get it from Whole Foods doesn't mean it's healthy. So let's boycott it. Boycott canola oil, genetically modified crops, diverticulitis. We get a lot of people that come into our office with diverticulitis. It's actually quite simple to work with. Of course, you need to get assessed. I'm just giving you generalizations. Don't run with this and go, oh, I have all the cures to diverticulitis. I can help everyone or help myself. You got to take a step back and get assessed by someone, because you're your biggest roadblock. That would be you and you. The large intestine, they typically call this... it's typically called diverticulosis at first, and then diverticulitis. So the large intestine, right, it's kind of like a balloon. You have an ascending, ascending, transverse, and descending colon, large intestine. So anytime the body is chronically dehydrated, the feces in the colon will actually swell. What happens is a lot of these things get stuck in the pockets. And these pockets actually increase. These are called the diverticuli. This causes the diverticulosis. That's an increase in these pouches. So if you had a balloon, and they took small balloons and you just inflated those around the big balloon, it's almost like those are the diverticulosis part of it. Now, when this gets chronic because of food additives, preservatives, crappy foods, genetically modified foods, stress, emotional stress, too much coffee, too much sugar, being chronically dehydrated, not enough fiber in your diet from cellulose and vegetables, what happens is they get so built up, and the large intestine actually has to expand to accommodate this, and those diverticulosis actually become diverticulitis, and they get so inflamed. So what happens is the bowel gets very hyperactive, and people get bouts of constipation versus diarrhea, or they feel like they have the urge to go to the bathroom and they can't. They have bloody stools, mucus, on and on and on. This can actually lead to Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, which is more of your autoimmune disease that, yes, we create. But anyway, the easiest thing about diverticulosis or diverticulitis, 99.9999, I think it's 999% of the time, it happens because of chronic dehydration, because the food just sitting in the bowel and actually causing inflammation. So how do we get rid of this? Well, there's many reasons you could be constipated. It could be a food intolerance, chronic dehydration, lack of cellulose, or insoluble fiber in your diet. Research shows that insoluble fiber actually helps with healing hyperpermeability and moving food along in the stool, but soluble fiber actually causes constipation and can actually create hyperpermeability issues. And there's many other reasons. So diverticulosis and colitis can actually easily be cured or fixed or healed by modifying diet, looking at the stressors, hydrating the body, and moving on from there. So the key is to get assessed to figure out why you have it, but it's actually a disorder that we create and can be modified or actually healed by regulating our diet, the foods we take in, and the amount of water we take in. So thanks for tuning in. Josh from eastwesthealing.com. Check you later. Overworked and maybe fatigued. So from that end, you can easily end up with a hormone imbalance. You can study the work of Dr. Timmons. He wrote, I think it's called the chronic stress syndrome, and he talks about how adrenal problems and stress can cause hormone problems. Because the adrenal glands kind of get overworked and fatigued, they start producing specific, what are called immunoglobulins, which can lead to a gut dysfunction. Those things help to fight against pathogens when you take them in. At the same time, your thyroid is one of the master regulators of metabolism, people say. So what happens is high elevations of cortisol and DHEA can block T4 to T3 conversion. That's one thing that can happen. That can cause false hypothyroid issues. But at the same time, when you're going 100 miles an hour and you're not stopping, the thyroid goes, puts on the brake and says, if you're not going to stop, I'm going to slow everything down in the body to help fight reduce stress. It slows the metabolism down. It tries to hold on to everything that it's got in order to fight the stressors that are going on in your life. It's almost like putting on the emergency brake, right? So that's another reason why you might get false hypothyroid issues. So it's not as easy as it may sound. It's complex. It's a system of systems. But looking at the internal environment and the external environment and creating that balance. I find most people that do have hypothyroid diagnoses, when we do types of hormonal testing, gut testing, and adrenal gland testing, it's usually a false hypothyroidism. And when you do the basic principles, as maybe using some adrenal adaptogens, or if you're skilled to use the right hormones, you can actually get that person back to normalcy where their thyroid's actually taken off the emergency brake, the adrenal glands are working properly, and it always comes down to you controlling life and not letting life control you. Hope that answers the question.
Thanks, great answer, Josh. Obviously, it's a pretty broad topic, but it gives Martinez.
Yeah.